Good afternoon. I'm calling the meeting to order. Just as a point of order, this personnel hearing is changed by request of Mr. Casey Brown's representative from a named hearing to an appeal termination personnel hearing. That means that the council will listen carefully to both sides presented in this appeal process in order to make an informed decision. We expect everyone in attendance to act respectfully and with decorum and not disruptive in any way to these proceedings. We're going to start off first. Councilman Guerra will offer our invocation, and then we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we're gathered today to do the work of our community. We have been focused on making Sky Valley a great place to live. We ask that you help all of us have open minds, listen attentively, and we go forward to be ever more mindful of the needs of others. In your name we pray.
Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next portion of our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Due to the change in the hearing process, I will need to have a motion to amend the presented agenda by inserting an executive session following item 4 on the agenda, the hearing proceeding by our city attorney and Mr. Casey Brown's representative. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the amended agenda being adopted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the amended agenda is adopted. All right, we are now on to the new business. With this, we will begin the appeal process hearing for Mr. Casey Brown. Mr. Kidd, if you will proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council, I'm just going to kind of give a brief overview of how this is going to go today. I spoke with Mr. Davis about this. I think we've kind of agreed on a format here that's formal, but not too formal. Both sides are going to give a brief opening statement to the council about what we believe the evidence is going to show. And then I, on behalf of the city, I'm going to present witnesses and evidence on behalf of the city. And Mr. Davis, on behalf of his, cross-examine any witnesses that I present. After I have presented my case in chief, then Mr. Davis witnesses or evidence on behalf of his client, and likewise I'll be able to cross-examine any witnesses that he may present. After he is done with his case, I may have a short case or not. After that, the evidence will be closed, and then both sides will give a closing argument. Is that your agreement, Mr. Davis?
It is.
All right. So at this point, I will go ahead and just give a brief opening of what I expect the evidence will hear. We are here for the termination appeal hearing of Officer Casey Brown. Officer Brown was a police officer here in Sky Valley until he was terminated from his employment on May 8th of 2023. I believe that what the council is going to hear primarily from Jason Streetman, our city manager, is that on roughly about April 17th of this year, Jason Streetman was notified by Lieutenant Ronald Loms of the Sky Valley Police Department that one of the police vehicles was having a catastrophic steering problem. You're going to hear from Jason Streetman that he investigated that, and sure enough, the steering of the vehicle was damaged, and it was taken to a dealership in Franklin, North Carolina for repair. Based on talking to the dealership up there, it was determined that the vehicle was damaged. On April 18th or so, Mr. Streetman sent an email to the police chief. You're going to hear about this, in which he said that the police vehicle had been damaged, and it had the same type of damage that other Subaru police vehicles had previously for the city. And that Mr. Streetman asked the chief to talk to his officers about that problem. You're going to hear later on from Mr. Streetman, I believe, that on May the 3rd, he's got a notification to his email that roughly around 3:26 a.m. in the morning, there was a police vehicle in the parking lot here at City Hall that was captured on the cameras. driving aggressively without any real reasonable or apparent reason why it was doing so, with aggressive takeoffs and braking and wild aggressive turning actions. You're going to hear from Mr. Streetman as well, I believe, that on the next day, Officer Lieutenant Bombs was instructed by Mr. Streetman to discuss the matter. And during that meeting, I think Lieutenant Bombs is going to testify that he spoke with Officer Brown about this aggressive driving. And during that time, Officer Brown told Lieutenant Bombs that he was going to drive these vehicles the same way that he did at his previous job, and it's not his fault that they don't have real police cars here. You're also going to hear testimony, I believe, from Mr. Streetman that the very next day on May the 4th, at roughly 4:25 a.m., Mr. Streetman received another email notifying him of a vehicle in the parking lot of City Hall. Mr. Streetman's testimony, I believe, is going to show that he reviewed video footage and it was the same police vehicle driven by Officer Brown, doing the same exact aggressive driving with quick takeoffs and hard braking, and that he hit a curb out there. And so I believe that's what the evidence is going to show. And I'll let Mr. Davis proceed at this time.
Good afternoon, Ariel. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today and for hearing Casey Brown's case. As noted, I had an opportunity to speak to a few of you beforehand. I'm an attorney from Atlanta. Please don't hold that against me. I have spent time, especially as a kid, up around this area, and I enjoy it very much. But that aside, as noted, Casey Brown was a Sky Valley police officer. He was here from 2014. He first started as a part-time officer, and he became full-time in 2019. Before he came to Sky Valley, he worked for Raven County Sheriff's Office. He's a well-trained officer. He's completed over 1,000 hours of specialized post-training, and he worked the overnight shift in Sky Valley for the entire time of his employment, keeping the population here safe while asleep. And these events occurred during Casey was terminated, as you heard a moment ago, on May 8th of 2023 by City Manager Jason Streetman for alleged reasons concerning his use of city vehicles. We would contest the characterization we just heard of how they were driven, but we'll get into that with the evidence. Streetman made a complaint to the police department after video captured Casey operating the patrol vehicles in the early morning hours of May 3rd and May 4th here in the City Hall parking lot. And it did so in a way the city manager didn't like. He informed the police chief, Von Estes, of the matter. Von Estes is here tonight as well and will testify to these events also. Chief Estes conducted an internal investigation, but instead of consulting the findings of the police department's investigation, which the evidence will show exonerated Casey from any wrongdoing, Mr. Streetman decided to terminate the agreement. He never reviewed the chief's report until after the termination. He didn't engage in progressive discipline, which is called for both in the city policy and the police department policy, but had made up his mind to fire Casey without ever giving him the opportunity to explain his actions before deciding to do so. The evidence will show that Streetman, in that process, violated nearly every disciplinary policy of the Sky Valley Police Department and acted in a way that violates the spirit, if not the letter, of the city's policy. In short, Casey Brown didn't do anything beyond properly conducting his duties, yet the city manager terminated. And at the end of the proceedings today, as was noted earlier, I am going to ask you to reverse his termination and provide him with back pay. I appreciate your time and attention very much. Thanks.
At this time, I will call Jason Streetman. Streetman, if you can sit up there. Right here? Yes, sir.
This will swear you in. You swear the testimony about giving.
I do.
All right, you can just state your name and where.
My name is Jason Streetman.
All right. Mr. Streetman, how are you employed?
I'm an employee. I'm employed with the city of Sky Valley City Manager.
All right. And how long have you been a city manager?
A little over 2.5 years.
And as city manager, is it your understanding that you have authority under the city charter and the city code to terminate employees?
I do.
as city manager, did you have the, did you terminate Casey Brown as his, employment with the Sky Valley Police Department?
I did.
All right. Let's start at the very beginning. What was, I guess, the first thing you saw about Officer Brown that made you want to investigate his actions?
Well, I guess it would have been about mid-April of this year. I received notification from the police department that the Ram pickup truck had what was described to me as a catastrophic failure in the front end. It had thrown a trouble code, and we have a rack at the shop. They looked at it. The trouble code came back extreme steering action, extreme steering maneuverability. And we was determined that it's something that something we could not fix. So, we had, Smith Automotive in Mount City look it over. They agreed that something had broken the front end. And that we were going to have to take it into the dealership or to somebody that specializes in front ends to fix it. And it was told to me at that time that they'd never seen a vehicle with that new and that low mileage have a brake like this. So we called around. The dealership up in Franklin was able to take it in. They called me back a couple of days later and said that the whole front end was going to be rebuilt, and that it was out of warranty, about $4,000 worth of work. And they told me the same thing, that based on what they could tell was extreme steering action. I said, have you ever seen anything like this before? They said, well, they've never seen something this low brake with this low miles on it. I asked the question at the time, could this have possibly been done intentionally through abuse? They said quite possibly, where my suspicions began. And it was probably around that time that I did speak with the chief about my concerns. Also, there had been some history. I've seen a correlation that there had been other vehicles in the past that he had driven that seemed to be breaking. So I had some concerns. The dealership called us a week or two later that it was ready. We went up and got it, paid the money to get it fixed, brought it back, and then not even 12 hours, $4,000 later, I get the video of this same extreme steering, unnecessary action going on in the parking lot, which I believe is what caused the original break. Unnecessary. So,
All right, so this first video you received, when did you receive that?
it was early May, maybe May 3rd, maybe May 4th. It was of the white Explorer.
And do we have video of that?
We do.
All right, at this time, I'm gonna ask Sharon.
And there's volume to that too, so if you make sure that the volume plays.
You can watch the video, and then when it's over, I'm gonna ask you a question. All right. So is that the video you received? On
That was the first video that I received, and I believe it was the next day that I received a call from the dealership that the truck was ready.
Okay.
And then there's another video that I received after that.
So there was another video the next day?
Correct. And this is the truck that we just got out of the shop that was broke due to extreme steering action.
In this next video?
Yes, correct.
We'll play that on May the 4th.
Do you need that one?
Yes.
Curve the valve, you just didn't want $4,000, whatever.
So that happened on the next day, May the 4th. Is that
It
correct?
did.
All right. At that point, what did you do?
At that point, I called Lieutenant Bombers, who was on shift that day, and asked him to come look at his videos, and I asked him, if an officer's not running blue lights or has a call, is there any time that that's appropriate to drive that way? And he said no. In fact, he's here now, you can ask him. And at that point, I said to him, I'm responsible to maintain the assets of this city. I can't have an officer doing this. Don't relieve him until we can figure this out. And so when Officer Bombas went down to get the keys to the vehicle, he came back to me and he said that, I guess when Mr. Brown asked him why he was being relieved, and he told him, he said, well, I'm gonna drive these rigs the way I'm gonna drive these rigs. It's not my fault the city don't have real police vehicles. So that kind of unapologetic poor attitude, that's when I made the decision to terminate.
Was that related to you by Lieutenant Boss?
It was,
When did he relate that to you?
probably around the 4th or 5th, it was about that time during May.
You had said earlier that this vehicle, this 2020 Ram pickup that went into the shop was not the first city police vehicle with this same steering problem. Is that
Well,
correct?
the Subaru that got surplus, that he had driven a lot, it had a catastrophic steering issue that we had to disclose when we surplused it. And so there's certainly a correlation there with that.
That vehicle, how do you have knowledge that it was his vehicle that he drove?
Well, they all drove different vehicles. Usually those Subarus, I will say they would go back and forth using them.
Mhm.
So, and at the time, I think, he may have been the only one that was using those Subarus.
Did you make it aware to the police department after the Subarus that these vehicles were having steering issues?
No, I just, as I stated earlier, I just shared my concerns with the chief at the time of what I felt was a correlation, not a coincidence, that we had the same officer. Seems like every time we had something break, it was the same officer that was driving the vehicle when it broke.
Did you ask anybody from the police department, either the chief or the lieutenant or anyone else, to speak to Officer Brown about this after the May 4th?
Yeah, in fact, I think after he was put on leave, I think the chief got involved. He and I had some conversations about it. He tended to have different concerns. His views were differently, but I feel like we went to the proper channels. And
Go ahead.
And then when I told the chief that I was of the opinion that based on the video evidence, based on what I had determined from speaking with the dealership, based on just his attitude, his response to Lieutenant Bombas, I made the decision to do the termination, and he said he did not agree with it, but I said, well, at the end of the day, I'm responsible to protect this city, and I can't have, assets like this being torn up through somebody's recklessness.
After reviewing the evidence in the city's policies and making the determination that you were going to terminate the officer, did you meet with Officer Brown after that?
I did. I asked him to come in,
Okay, do you recall what day that was?
probably the 7th, 8th of May, maybe. It was early mid-May,
Okay. Where did that meeting occur?
in this room right here.
All right, and who was present at that meeting?
I believe at the time it may have been me. I'm not sure if the chief was there or not, but he was aware of what I was doing.
And during that meeting with Officer Brown, what did you talk to him about?
Basically, everything that's been detailed here,
And what was his response to you?
that I could see why I would feel the way I do, but there was no apology or anything, no real excuse, no remorse.
Did you write a letter to Officer Brown when you terminated him detailing why he was being determined and what policies he is alleged to have violated?
I did.
And when you reviewed the city's policies and determined that he had violated them, which policies did you determine he violated?
It's in the personnel policy. It has to
Do
do
you
with.
need to refer to that letter to refresh your recollection?
This is section 4. You want to read all of this, Mr. Kidd?
Yes, sir.
Employee conduct and work rules, employee safety policy. Each employee is expected to obey safety rules and exercise caution in all work activities. Employees must immediately report any unsafe conditions to the appropriate supervisor. Employees who violate safety standards, who cause hazardous or dangerous situations, or who fail to report or, where appropriate, remedy such situations, may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Employee safety procedures: work, don't play, never participate in horseplay or practical jokes on the job, driver rules, vehicles must be operated in accordance with the laws, ordinances, and regulations of the city, county, and state of operation. Safe turning procedures should be practiced at all times, including signaling for all turns, changing lanes for turns well in advance of interactions, and avoiding signaling, swinging wide or short during turns. Use of equipment and vehicles. Equipment and vehicles essential in accomplishing job duties are expensive and may be difficult to replace. When using property, employees are expected to exercise care, perform required maintenance, and follow all operating instructions, safety standards, and guidelines. Improper, careless, negligent, destructive, or unsafe use or operation of equipment or vehicles, as well as excessive or avoidable traffic and parking violations, can result in disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Section 5, discipline and grievance procedures, violation of rules of conduct. A violation of any of these rules will result in disciplinary action ranging from an oral correction to discharge. J, conduct which endangers you or another employee. K, unauthorized use of city tools, equipment, telephones, or other city property. Q, gross negligence or abuse resulting in the damage or destruction of tools, machinery, equipment, products, materials, or other property belonging to the city or to others. The first violation of the following may result in immediate termination. D, deliberate action causing damage or destruction or waste of tools, machinery, equipment, product, materials, or other property belonging to the city, a city official, or to a fellow worker.
So all those separate rules and policies from the city that you just listed, you felt that he had violated.
I did.
And what, in your opinion, did he violate that would call for you to terminate him on this instance rather than suspending him or things of that nature?
Well, the final determination really was what he told Lieutenant Thomas, that I'm gonna drive these vehicles. There was no disregard. I hear what you're saying, but I'm gonna drive these vehicles the way I'm gonna drive them. It's not my fault. The city didn't have real police vehicles. That was pretty much the deciding force for me. Obviously, there was no remorse or apology.
At this time, I don't have any other questions for Mr. Davis.
So I think you went through your bio pretty well. I got just a couple of those questions. My name's Tim, by the way. I don't think I met you yet today. I do have a few questions for you. I represent Casey.
Okay.
So I think you said you've been at the City of Sky Valley, was it 2 years?
A little over 2 years, I believe in February, it'll be 3 years.
Okay, and have you ever been a city manager anywhere before?
I have not.
Okay. I want to touch on just a couple of the things you just testified to, and then I have some other questions too. But I really want to ask you some more about this Dodge Ram truck. So when you talk to the folks at the dealership, they said that it could be a cause, right? They didn't definitely say that was the reason, did they?
No, obviously they weren't there, they don't know the situation, and I think I stated that.
But they could be other causes, could they not? Yeah. You were the person who raised the issue of whether it could be negligence or intentional abuse, weren't you?
Based on what I observed, correct.
Okay. Back to your job history just a minute. You never been a police officer, have you?
No.
Okay. So are you aware of the stress and strains that are put on patrol vehicles as opposed to regular vehicles?
I am.
Okay. Are you familiar that manufacturers make vehicles specifically for police work because of that very reason? Were any of these vehicles actually police vehicles? Were they manufactured as police vehicles?
The white one was.
The Explorer.
Yes.
And what kind of damage did it have?
To my knowledge, that one doesn't have any damage.
Doesn't have any damage, does it?
It's brand new though.
The Dodge Ram, from the video on the fourth of it, any damage to it?
I have just the previous damage.
I mean, from the, some of the fourth. You don't know what caused the damage the first time, do you?
The extreme steering action, what caused the damage.
But you don't know how that happened, do you?
Based on what I saw.
No, that's not what I'm asking you. You don't know that, do you? You didn't see anything, you don't have any evidence to say anybody in particular caused that damage.
No, I don't know.
So you mentioned that the repair bill of that truck was $3,500 to $4,000. Did the city actually pay that?
We had to pay about 500 of that. I was able to negotiate with the dealership. They were able to file a warranty claim, but it was still about $4,000 that was outlaid. That had to be paid for through a warranty claim.
Okay, so they covered it under warranty. Except for $500, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because, yes, through my negotiations, yes.
For your negotiation, and do you know why they agreed to do that? Dealerships are pretty bad about not wanting to honor warranties if it's not their fault.
Because we've done business with them in the past, and I said we take that into consideration for future business.
Did they take into consideration that perhaps similar model vehicles have had recalls on that issue? Okay.
No, that one, well, yeah, that particular year model was not.
Did they mention that to
Yeah,
you?
they did.
They did? What did they say about that?
Well, that was another factor they took into consideration, that even though that year model was not under recall, they were able to do it. So
Okay, because there had been a recall on that issue? Is that what they told you?
for similar vehicles, mine.
For similar vehicles?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your videos for just a second. So, the camera that made those videos, I presume it's right out here when I walked up, right?
Correct.
When did you put those cameras up?
When we moved in the city hall here.
Okay, when was that?
Oh, April, I think we moved in April this year.
Okay. You have other cameras set up?
Yeah, we have a couple of Wise cameras that they capture the front doors.
Okay. And forgive me for asking, but I need to know, do you have any cameras in your office?
No, well, I've got one, but it faces outward.
Okay. Does it record audio?
I don't know if it did or not. I don't think, it might. I mean, I've never used it. It's not plugged in.
It's not plugged in. Okay. So why is it in there facing outward if it's not plugged
I
in?
just never set it up yet. It's just an extra camera we have. It's just sitting in. It just sits in there for appearance.
These record audio outside of that. Do they?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Is it fair bet to say that one probably was capable of recording audio? Is it a fair bet to say that one's probably capable of recording audio?
Which camera's
That
that?
one in your office?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, if it was hooked up, it would be.
And is there any video, any meetings with my client or anybody else about this issue that occurred in your office?
No. I made it in here.
Okay. You mentioned in response to one of the questions from Mr. Kidd that you did speak with Officer Brown, but wasn't that the same date that you terminated him?
It was.
And I believe the termination letter date is May 8th. I believe, is that right? You know?
It may have been.
Okay. If you need it for reference, we have it in ours. So May 8th, and I think said you talked to him on May 8th. Did you already have that letter typed up when you talked to him?
I did. I was prepared to go that route if I had to. I wanted to make sure that if it went that route, I could give it to him.
But you'd already made up your mind. Otherwise, why would you type the letter?
I made up my mind because I wanted to be prepared if I had to go that route.
So you never spoke to him individually before you decided?
I spoke to, again, I had the letter drafted up and then I needed to go that route. I was prepared to talk with him and give him a chance. But again, when I saw there was no remorse in his actions, then that pretty much made the decision right then and there.
But you didn't, did you? You didn't get to talk to him?
I did talk to him. I talked to him.
Before you made the decision, Darren?
I made a decision to terminate him when we were talking. I'd already read the letter up, just so I had it on hand if I needed to give it to him.
Oh, okay, so you just preemptively decided you were going to terminate you, though you hadn't made that decision. Is that what you're talking about?
I was prepared to do that, sir, if I had to.
So I want to talk about this conversation with Lieutenant Baum just a second. When you heard that comment, I know you thought that it was non-remorseful, but did you think talking to my client about what he meant by that?
I thought it was pretty clear when he,
You didn't think you should talk to him and?
when I did talk to him on that day.
Before that day?
I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Before the day that you terminated?
It was part of the reason when he told me that, and I knew I was gonna be talking to him, is when I went and read the letter, and anything I need to give it to him.
And you talked a little while ago about speaking with Chief Estes about this. Tell me about how Chief Estes became involved and did you call him? Did he call you? Tell me more about that.
We talked, I don't know, I made a call, I'm sure I called him. Let him know about my concerns.
And what did he tell you he was gonna do?
He basically looked at the video and he felt like it wasn't that serious of a matter.
Did he explain to you what he saw in the video?
He just saw it differently.
He just saw it differently. So he didn't have a concern over, did he?
He didn't have a concern that I guess obviously I have.
Now, you know, he conducted an internal affairs investigation about the complaint as well. You aware of that?
I was.
Okay. So his report, it's in that binder, it's number 10 in the binder. So the date on this report, if you look at it, you can. The date on the report is May 4th. So that's 4 days before you decided to terminate the case, isn't it?
That's 4 days before I was prepared to go that route if I had to.
Okay. So you had 4 days to review this report. Did you review it?
I was not made aware that he had done it before. He was not shared with me.
You didn't check with him to see if he'd done a report since you'd already made a complaint to him?
I thought, we had talked and he said that he didn't see an issue with it and I left it at that.
So I'm looking at his letter and it addresses some of the rule violations you just talked about. Talks about violations of section 4. He says driver rules 3 and 8 don't apply. And he explains, and I'll get him to do it under testimony, but he explains his viewpoint on that. He also notes that the use of equipment and vehicles policy that we quoted earlier requires careless, negligent, destructive, or unsafe operation. He then talks about circle turns. He talks about the large size of that truck. Does that truck have a bigger turn radius than a regular police car would?
I have no idea.
Okay. You ever driven a truck?
I have.
Okay. You ever driven a car?
I have.
That should be within your common knowledge. Do you think the truck had a bigger turning radius than the car?
Well, the fact he hit the curve, I'd say it has a bigger, yes.
Chief also found that some of these violations, rules of conduct also didn't apply. But you never reviewed this. When's the first time you saw this report?
I've never seen it before. It wasn't given to me.
Wasn't given to you.
It was not given to me.
You couldn't try to give it to him.
As I said earlier, that I thought this ended when we basically agreed to disagree. He said he didn't see anything with it. And I said, Chief, I see it different. My responsibility is to protect the assets of the city.
Did he try to give you a copy of the report?
To my recollection, I don't recall ever getting it.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's not quite the same question. I'm not asking you if you got it. I'm asking if you remember.
I don't recall receiving it, sir. I'm not saying if he emailed it to me, I don't recall ever receiving it.
In fact, you refused to take it from him, didn't you?
No, sir, that's not true.
So you have this video. You never talked to Casey. You have your own opinion as to what happened. And based on that, without anything else, that's what made you decide to terminate. Am I clear on that? I just want to make sure I understand you.
Based on the action, the video, based on his attitude, is when I made the decision to terminate.
Is attitude a policy violation? Is there a policy about having an attitude?
it's a pet peeve of mine, because an employee's gonna have a good attitude at work here.
Can you fire somebody for a pet peeve,
I can fire at will.
even for a pet peeve? You don't
I
care?
can fire at will, sir.
So this attitude issue you described, doesn't sound like you like Casey very much.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I actually ran into him at a football game, Mr. Brown, a few weeks ago. We had a nice, pleasant, harmless conversation. I have no ill, I'm sorry. I met with Mr. Brown, and I have no ill, I don't take any of this personal.
All right, I want to take a look at the policy. We are going to need to look at this. I'm going to walk you through it. So I'm looking at the police department policy. It's tab 7 in the notebook that you used there.
Here, you know.
That tab policy has an individual number of pages at the bottom. And I want you to look at page 1. What I'm specifically going to look at policy 4-8, A4, which is actually going to be section 4, on page 1. It says corrective and punitive disciplinary actions against an employee shall be initiated promptly on evidence that such action is necessary to maintain an orderly, safe, and productive work environment. Except in cases of theft or serious violations of policy or procedure that creates a health or safety risk, disciplinary actions must be progressive in severity. See that?
So page 130.
33. And in the city policy, there's something similar. If you look at city policy is the tab before that. It's almost at the back. Page 36 talks about progressive discipline as well. It says this: the best disciplinary measure is one that does not have to be enforced and comes from good leadership and fair supervision at all employment levels. The city's own best interest lies in ensuring fair treatment of all employees and making certain that disciplinary actions are prompt, uniform, and impartial. The major purpose of any disciplinary action is to correct the problem, prevent reoccurrence, and prepare the employee for satisfactory service in the future. Goes on a little further down the same policy. Progressive discipline means that with respect to most disciplinary problems, these steps will normally be followed. A first offense may call for a verbal warning. The next offense may be followed by a written warning. Another offense may lead to suspension, and still another may lead to termination of employment. Now, while I understand the city policy is a guideline, why didn't you follow progressive discipline? Why did you decide not to do that in this case?
I felt like his actions were serious enough that I needed to, again, based when I met with him and his attitude, I felt like that I needed to terminate and protect the city.
It was a bump on a curb. You didn't feel like progressive discipline was, that he had worked for the city and shouldn't have a chance to change his behavior that you believed was wrong?
Stand by what I did.
Okay.
It's not pleasant. I don't take it personal. You know, I'm hired to protect the assets of this city, protect the best interest of this city.
And you didn't have any direct evidence that he caused any damage to the assets of the city.
Well, based on the fact that the vehicle was torn up under while he was driving it the first
And we-
time.
Already covered that, you said we couldn't prove he damaged it. So,
To me, it's an attitude thing, it goes back to.
so this is back in. Yes. Basically, he played the city manager.
I was not happy when I saw the way he was driving city vehicles, that's correct, unnecessarily.
When you met with him, did you refer to him as your vehicles? Did you say, I don't like the way you treat my vehicles?
I don't recall saying that, but I mean, but I mean, I'm responsible for these, so it may be something I would have said, but when I say that, I mean that it ultimately is my responsibility.
So back to police department policy. 135, page 135 of the police department policy. Community advantage. Second paragraph, so the chief of police shall have authority to take any disciplinary action provided for in these regulations. Prior to taking any disciplinary action, the chief of police shall provide the employee with a copy of the charges and allow such employee a reasonable period of time to respond, which shall be not less than 3 work days. Casey, you have 3 days to respond to your allegations. Don't seem right with you.
I don't recall, this all goes back to when I met with him that day.
And the letter dated that day says he's terminated effective immediately, this night. So he never had an opportunity to respond, did he?
No.
At the bottom of the page. In all cases of demotion, suspension, and dismissal, this was a dismissal, right? An employee shall receive written notice of such disciplinary action at least 5 working days prior to such effective date when possible. Standard charging document shall contain the reasons for the actions, the specific charge, the effective date, and appeal rights. So if you didn't get 3 days notice, he didn't get 5 days notice either, did he?
No.
And did he get a document that explained the reasons and provided his appeal rights?
No.
Yeah. Why did you not explain his appeal rights to him?
I was not aware of this document, and the chief did not really apprise me of this.
So you're the city manager of the city, and you didn't know the police department had a
I
policy?
did know they had a policy, but I've never read that section.
Have you read any of them?
I have now, yes.
Yeah, now. Okay. Now, I understand there's some conflicts between the police department and the city policy. Who's responsible for making sure those policies are correct and proper?
I would say that I am the city manager, along with the police chief on the, in operation procedure.
So, got one other exhibit I want you to look at. So it's page 138 of the police department policy. But if you look in the policy section, we just looked at, which is what the city provided under open records, that page is missing. We didn't get that page when we initially did our open records. It's only through some other investigation that we discovered that it existed. It talks about appeals in the police department. So I guess the question I would have for you, do you have any idea why that page was omitted from a copy of the policy that the city provided our firm?
I was informed about that, and it was my understanding at the time that page was at the police department. But it was brought back after the fact, and y'all received it or got a copy. But I don't know why the page was missing, but
Is there only one copy of the police department policy?
we have a copy up here.
And And
I
copy,
had the
you
copy,
guys have that
I
back?
laid the copy up here, the version we had up here, for whatever reason, those pages were missing.
It's just coincidence that page happens to be the page about bills.
I would say it is a coincidence, but I was aware of that.
So, conversation with Lieutenant Bond. Was it recorded with body camera video?
My conversation with him,
No, Lieutenant Bond's conversation with Casey.
if I believe it was, it may have been.
Okay, because we didn't get that in open records either. I didn't find out about it till yesterday. Is there body camera video or is there not?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they recorded it or not.
So part of your termination decision is based on a statement that Casey made to Lieutenant Bond. There may be a video of it. You didn't take the time to go back and watch it.
Again, sir, I didn't know if it's been recorded or not to even know that. He just came back to me and told me what he said, and I had to trust my lieutenant.
Your police officer have body cameras?
that
Are they supposed to record those kind of interactions?
Possibly, I mean,
Also, okay. I don't mean to get too cross with you. This seems like there's a lot about the police department that you don't know. Have you spent some time with the chief, with the new chief, to familiarize yourself with the policies and procedures of the police department?
no, but I would have hoped that he would have been more proactive to help me out. But no, I mean, I pretty much allow my chief to run the department and expect to be informed of things. And so, you know, when this all transpired, his response to me was, well, if you fire him, he's gonna sue.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't let that sway me from having to do what I need to do. And here we are.
You said you expect you to be more proactive to help you?
Yes.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I can't do everything as city manager. I can't know every single thing going on all the time. That's what the department heads are for. He's police chief, the chief is hired to run his department.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand that. But you do have an obligation to be familiar with what goes on with folks you see,
Yes,
and department heads are following your supervision.
they do.
I don't think
But I don't recall ever having any of these conversations about, you know, the consequences of what's gonna happen off the gun. If you do what you're gonna do, he's gonna see. I never had conversations about processes or this or that, and he didn't surprise me. And so based on the information that I had and my authority, again, I felt like I needed to protect the city.
I don't think I had anything further.
Mr. Streetman, I've got a few follow-up questions on that. There was some discussion about whether Officer Brown's so-called attitude with you and Lieutenant Bond's following this incident was reason enough for violating the policies of the city. Does the city have a policy on insubordination?
Yes, I believe it's in the employee handbook.
It's in the employee handbook. It's also in the standard operations and procedures manual that we just went over. I believe page 135 references gross insubordination as a reason why somebody can get into trouble. Would you describe Officer Brown's actions first with Lieutenant Bond as related to you by the lieutenant, and then to you on May the 8th as insubordination?
I would, yeah, I definitely thought that was, for lack of a better word, bang out of order to make a comment like that, particularly when we're talking about expensive police vehicles.
And then, Mr. Davis was asking you some questions about the operations manual and how shouldn't Officer Brown's actions been through a progressive discipline? And you read a excerpt here, said, except in cases of theft or serious violations of policy or procedure that creates a health or safety risk, disciplinary actions must be progressive in severity. Based on the videos that we've seen, did you feel like those actions were a health or safety risk to either Officer Brown or the building or anybody else out there?
I did.
In the past year or so, has the city had a city employee driving a city vehicle crash into a building?
We had one, late last year.
So based on those videos there, do you feel that Officer Brown's driving posed a risk to either his safety or the building's safety?
I did.
Were you ever given any explanation as to why he was driving?
No, I don't have, beyond, it was borderline and maturity, what, I have no reason, I don't know.
Did Chief, the former Chief Estes, did he give you any explanation as to why Officer Brown was driving?
I don't recall.
How long was your conversation with Chief Estes about his internal report?
I don't recall him ever doing one. Again, I thought it ended when he told me that he didn't see any issue with it. And I said, well, we have a different view. And that I'm, depending upon on his attitude and how he answers himself, I'm gonna be prepared to terminate him if I need to. That's why I went ahead and wrote that letter out, have it in advance. And that's when he said to me, well, if you do that, you're the boss, you're city manager. If you do it, he's gonna sue. And that was all. That's all. I thought that was the end of it.
There was also some questioning about whether Officer Brown had enough opportunity to respond to the city's allegations. I think the policy said 3 days. I believe your earlier testimony was that you had Lieutenant Baum speak to Officer Brown on May 4th. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And to your knowledge, that conversation between Officer Brown and Lieutenant Baum was about the allegations that we're here for today. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Between May the 4th and the time you terminated him on May the 8th, Officer Brown had either tell you or put something in writing or have someone else tell you that he was disputing these allegations.
I don't recall receiving anything here about it.
Did he mention to you that he was wanting to appeal to any rights he had under this policy?
I don't recall anything else.
Did he say anything to you between May 4th and May 8th?
No, not until I asked him to come in.
Thank you. No further questions.
So I believe we're quoting the policy. Mr. Kidd mentioned the provision that talks about safety and so forth. Is it your testimony that you think anybody in curb that vehicle was a safety violation?
Yes. I think it was unnecessary.
All right, I'll fight some question. You think it was a safety issue?
Yes.
Anybody injured?
No, it
Was the truck injured, so to speak? Was the truck
I
damaged?
haven't been informed about it. I don't know if it was or not.
Okay. And as far as that time frame with the 3 days, that conversation with Lieutenant Baum didn't tell me he was being terminated. Did he?
No, I mean, he was not terminated until the 8th.
That was just investigative in nature, wasn't it?
He was put on administrative leave, I recall.
Right. To investigate what happened. So there weren't any allegations to notify him of at that time, right? You had.
No, he was made notified when he was put on leave. Why?
He was given notice of specific policy violations.
Lieutenant Baum's the one who talked with him that day, so I'm not sure what he notified. He just told him that I had concerns about the way he was driving city vehicles.
I have no further questions. You can say that. All right, at this time, I'll call Lieutenant Baum to the stand. Lieutenant, if you could raise your right hand, you swear that the testimony about giving you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Now, see. Can you state your name, please?
Ronald Moses,
All right, response. How are you employed?
with the Scott Valley Police
All right, what is your rank?
Department,
All right, and how long have you worked for Scott Valley?
12 years.
Now, you've been in the room today, we didn't invoke the rule of sequestration, we didn't make you step outside, so you've heard everything that's been going on so far, is that correct? All right, so you understand that there is a question of exactly what you told Officer Brown, I think, on May the 4th. Can you just tell us what occurred?
Well, I've got the actual paper that I gave Officer Brown when I went to pick up the truck. And if I could just read that, it sums it up. It's been brought to our attention by the city manager, Jason Streetman, that on May 3rd, 2023, at approximately 03:26, and again on May 4th, 2023, at approximately 04:25, you were seen on video driving recklessly through the city parking lot at 3608 Highway 246. At one point, driving the Dodge Ram patrol vehicle, you made a U-turn, striking the curb with the passenger front tire. And then I wanted to explain to him where the next paragraph, I said, on our last rotation, we had already been discussing the vehicles being tore up. And that's what this is in reference to, the second paragraph. On our last rotation, which would have been 4 days prior, well, it might have been different because we overlapped 2 days, but anyway, it was about a calendar. While you and I were discussing the complaints made about the vehicles breaking down and being tore up, you stated, I'm going to drive these vehicles the same way as I did in Gainesville. It's not my fault. We don't have real police cars. And the conversation we were having was the other night shift officer, they were sharing vehicles. She was complaining that her stuff was getting flown all over the car. When she come in, her stuff was all on the passenger floorboard. And that's what we were discussing, the vehicle being drove hard.
Did Officer Brown have a response to you when he told you?
That was the only response he gave.
How long was this conversation?
It was a shift change, so probably 15 minutes. And no, I don't video shift change conversations. We have them every 12 hours.
That was gonna be my next question. Was there video of this conversation?
No, I'm sure, well, unless the camera was on accidentally, I don't video our shift change conversations.
To your knowledge, there's not video, is
No, I don't believe so.
it? How often did you work or at the same time as Officer Brown?
We all work 4-day shifts. I overlap 2 days with each of the night shift officers.
And you were in here earlier when we watched those videos. Just in your opinion as a police officer here in Sky Valley, was there any legitimate police reason for him to be driving in that manner?
I don't get paid to make that opinion. I mean, you're asking me to make an opinion of something that is above my pay grade.
When you see that, can you just tell us what he was doing?
It looked to me that he pulled up over here to look at the deadbolt to make sure it was locked, pulled around the other side, turned around, then was checking to see if he saw that deadbolt locked.
How, just in your training, you've been given training on how to estimate how fast the vehicle is going just by looking at it. Is that correct? Can you do that off of a video?
Yeah, not that little bit of short distance.
You would need to be there in person to be able to see it. Have you ever seen Officer Brown drive in any manner that you didn't think was appropriate in a city vehicle?
Never seen, I just seen the vehicle after his shift, like the toolbox floating around in the back of the pickup truck. Just evidence of rough driving, but no, I've never witnessed. We don't overlap hours. He leaves, I come on, get these.
And you've driven that truck before, correct? All right. When you drive that truck, are the tools slung around in such a manner?
I'm talking about that toolbox in the back of the pickup truck. At one point, Officer Clark called me and told me that the toolbox was in the back of the truck, not back up where it was sitting. She apparently shoved it back up where it went and got maintenance to security.
Are you aware of anyone else in the city police department with allegations of improper driving by Mr. Brown?
Say it again.
Are you aware of any other officers with Sky Valley that have said things in the past about Officer Brown's driving?
No.
Okay. And just that one officer that you just described, is that correct?
Right, and that was just based on the things that she seen when she got her vehicle back. Not that she didn't see it.
No further questions.
First, thanks for clearing up the issue of the bike camera. I haven't thought there was one. I'm glad to hear that there's not. As I mentioned, my name's Ken, I represent Casey. How long have you been at Sky Valley?
Since 2010, part-time, full-time, 2001.
Okay. You mentioned this memo that you wrote And just for the benefit of the council, that's in our binder as well. Tab number 9 in our binder, so we can have it. You indicated that that's a memo that you drafted.
Right, the chief, I spoke to him by phone, he told me to write it up, send it to him. He cleared for me to go get the vehicle and get Casey to sign.
That's fine. And so the chief's on the directive to do that?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, remember what the conversation was that the chief had with you when he told you to do that?
Just get him to sign, read this, sign it, and bring the vehicle back so that he investigated what was up, alleged.
There's been lots of conversation and testimony about this statement that he made. He's gonna drive on the way that he did in Gainesville, same salt line for police cars. Police work's pretty demanding on cars, isn't it? You've been a police officer a long time. How long have you been an officer?
Since 2005.
Okay, so none of the vehicles that are here at Sky Valley are official police vehicles, are they?
Yeah, we've got the 2 Explorers, both nights with the vehicles.
Okay. Beyond those, the Subarus we talked about earlier, they're not, are they? The Dodge Ram truck that we've heard all this conversation about. Were you party to any of the conversations at the dealership?
No,
Okay. So what was you alluded to it a moment ago, but can you give me a little more context around that statement that's in the memo that Casey made?
I was discussing with him about people complaining about the vehicles being drove hard, being drove rough. We need to be careful and not beat the vehicles up. And that's what his response was.
Did you seem frustrated that the vehicles weren't meant to maintain the type of use that they were given?
I don't remember recalling it was frustrated at all.
You talk about stuff sliding around the back. You ever driven a truck?
Mhm.
You ever truck? There's stuff in the back of it sometimes?
Yeah, it's not, I'm talking about the toolbox that's mounted in the truck, not just the shelf on the back of it.
Oh, I got you. So the toolbox, in a big toolbox, might be prone to slide if it's not secured properly, might it? Okay. Do you know if that toolbox was properly secured before that complied? Okay. I believe that was the only thing you referenced that had come up. Was there anything else? Am I missing something? So we talked about those videos from the 3rd and the 4th, and Mr. Kidd asked you some questions about that. You described what it looked like Casey was doing, checking the door, checking the locks, looking around. That's all stuff that's within the scope of his duties, isn't it? You know, if either of those vehicles, either the Explorer from the 3rd or the Dodge on the 4th, either of those sustain any damage that you're aware of?
Just the ding in the front passenger side rim of the Dodge Ram.
Yeah, so there's a ding in the rim.
Yeah,
What you're saying?
it was. Yeah, it wasn't like, it wasn't bad where it needed to be repaired. It was just a ding.
You got any reason to believe that Casey intentionally damaged any vehicles that belong to the city?
I'd be speculating if I did.
You know, I heard him say, I'm gonna tear this car because I don't like working here.
No.
Nothing like that. No further questions, thank you.
That is it for me. Mr. Davis, Mr. Dawson, Mrs. Zia.
I'd like to call former Chief Estes. You please raise your right hand for me. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Excuse me. So you're here at the city for a while. I'm not sure how much of an introduction you need, but we're gonna go through it anyway.
Okay.
Can you give your name for the record?
Vaughn Dale Estes?
Okay. And you ever been employed by the city of Sky Valley?
Yes.
Can you describe that? What was your position?
I've served as chief of police from January of 17 until October 2nd, 23.
Okay. And you're not employed here now?
No, sir.
And I believe you were terminated from the city, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So that was a period of 6 years. I don't do math.
At least 7 in January, 6 and 10 months. Right?
So during your tenure here at the city, you familiar with Officer Casey Brown?
Yes, sir.
How would you describe him as an officer?
He was a very good and professional officer. He was one of the guys that are to the T. He dots every I, cross every T. We could pick on him a little bit about being OCD like that.
You ever get accolades from the public, anything like that, that you're aware of?
Yes, he got quite often compliments, because at night he was encountering people and they would always write a little letter or just come by and see me or flag me down and tell me, you know, how much they appreciated him and his diligence being out there.
Now, I want to look at, so tab 12 in that notebook there contains a performance evaluation. Okay,
It's a tab.
12.
Okay,
Now, before we go through this too much, I want to ask you, what's the date on that performance evaluation?
12/12/19.
Okay, so this evaluation is a couple of years old.
Yes, sir.
This is the only evaluation that was produced by our firm in open records. Do you know why that would be?
No.
Was there other evaluations done after that that you're aware of?
Yes, we do them at the end of each year. The police department's system is, I send them a self-evaluation, they fill it out. Then I take that evaluation and provide it to their lieutenant, who's their direct supervisor, who will then evaluate them since they're the direct supervisor over them, not me. And then that would come to my desk, and then I would provide a copy to the city manager.
But I believe you conducted this one, if I'm not mistaken.
Possibly, this was also the year I believe Casey came on full time with us.
If you'll look at the next page, there's your signature, I believe. Is that your signature?
Yes,
Okay, so you conducted this one.
yeah, I did all the final ones. They would come to my desk after bouncing through the lieutenants.
Okay. So I want you to take a second and kind of look through that evaluation. There's for each one of these categories, there's a rating scale, right? It's an EGSFU. You see at the top of each box for each category.
I do.
So how did Casey do? How did he stack up on this evaluation?
It's kind of hard to see this copy here. Job knowledge, E for excellent. Job performance, E for excellent. Productivity, E for excellent. Dependability, E for excellent. Cooperation, E for excellent. Initiative, E for excellent. Work environment and safety, G for good, because I didn't directly supervise him. I had limited knowledge. And then overall performance, E for excellent.
Okay. And while this is a couple of years old,
Yes, sir.
does this still characterize your opinion of what his performance was until termination?
Absolutely. He was always very professional. I would randomly review body cam footage. I've never seen a single thing to raise the question and change this.
And I asked you a little earlier about public accolades and so forth. And I believe Area 3 here mentions that he had gotten some positive feedback from the public.
Area 3, where are you?
Actually, let's see. It's the third block down. It's the job productivity, right? It's a little bit difficult to read. It's like,
Yes, I see it now, okay.
Okay.
And he was rated E for excellent in job productivity, and then my statement or my comments were, since transitioning from part-time to full-time, Officer Brown has made excellent progress in his duties. There has been positive public comments.
So let's look at tab 13. You mentioned some of the public accolades. I got a couple of them here.
Okay.
Again, these are produced in our open records. 13, can you describe what that appears to be to you?
You want me to say who they're from?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Reference, Casey Brown, from David Westfall. Sent this to the city clerk. I called 911 Wednesday night because I'm a courier and I couldn't find the house on Alex Mountain. Casey responded and led me to the house. He was so helpful, so professional, and led me back to 441. Afterwards as well, my GPS led me very close to the house, but LaBelle Circle told me to go back down the hill. My father died on Tuesday, the 12th, and Casey helped navigate me through this awful week. Please congratulate him on his efforts and resolve in helping so many people each year. Sincerely, David Westfall, Courier Express, Eckworth, Georgia.
Now, I don't necessarily want you to read them, but look behind tab 14 and 15. There appears to be two more of these. Can you describe them?
Not reading, just describing, correct?
Sure. Can you read them if you want to?
Okay, well, this was dated 2020, March 31st, 2020. Dear Chief, this one was sent to me instead of City Clerk. Officer Casey Brown came to my home at 10 o'clock p.m. last evening to tell me I had left my garage door open. Thank you for his kindness and his thoughtfulness. An animal or a person could have gotten into my garage. Sincerely, Maureen Platt.
And in the next tab, you got another letter. And again, I don't necessarily need to read that, but is this another positive note from the public?
Yes, this one was addressed to me from Helen Kleiber. And it was also sent to the mayor, council manager Fast, which was our former city manager, councilors Barrett, Curtis, Morley, Oliver, and Turner, most of which are still on the current council. And you said, do not read this?
It's up to you, but it's lengthy. Can
It
you
is
just kind of
lengthy.
summarize it?
I'll summarize it. This is an incident that occurred at 3 o'clock a.m. in the morning. And it woke her up, and it was 911 calling her. They said that an officer on night shift noticed the garage door was open and wanted to check and make sure that she had not just forgotten it, and to make sure to close it. She got up and met the officer, and he was in the driveway with a flashlight, making sure she was safe. She opened the door, she greeted him, and she had told him that yard work was being done, and she forgot to close the door. She had a difficult time going back to sleep that night, and she cannot, let's see. I kept thinking, what types of awful things could have happened with the garage door open, allowing easy access into my home, my house, and thinking how grateful I am that our police take time to notice things out of the ordinary, and only because they have previously observed what is ordinary. A huge thank you to Casey for being so diligent, taking time to check with me to make sure everything was okay. She eventually went back to sleep and her home was secure. Helen Kleiber.
Not everybody's perfect. Sometimes people get bad notes, right? You ever remember any bad notes about Casey?
I remember one, it was from one of our, how do I say, known people who we can't seem to always make happy. Casey was responding to a call about this person with their dog on someone else's porch. And the people did not want the lady and her dog on their porch. But they called, Casey responded. He gets there, and sure enough, the lady's dog's on the porch, so he engages her in conversation, but not aggressive or hostile conversation, just polite conversation, advising her, hey, they don't want the dog or you on their porch. Let's go. Made polite, pleasant conversation on body cam. Nothing amiss. She felt that his conversation drug out longer than necessary to tell her to get her dog off the porch, and she felt that maybe he's hitting on her.
You
So,
reviewed by the camera?
yes, and Casey,
Did you find?
I read his paperwork on it as well. I saw nothing out of the ordinary. We have to make sure, because if we send them on their way too quick and then check out the house and find that the doors broke in, the windows broke in, the doors unlocked, something, now we need to check out, and we may have just let a violator walk away. So we have to be thorough. So it does take a hot minute to do a thorough job.
Are you familiar with any other than this current issue? Anything else negative that you recall?
I had a gentleman on Ridgepole. I should know his name because he's a very, very nice man. And we spoke. He was upset one evening because he had engaged Casey in the late night. They had a discussion at the foot of his driveway. He wasn't happy with the way the conversation went. He didn't want to file a complaint. He just told me that him and Casey had had some words, And he just wanted to come to me as the police chief and let me know, no harm, no foul. He didn't file a complaint or nothing. He just wanted me to be aware of it. I contacted Casey. He told me about it. Their stories pretty much matched up. And that was it. But he never filed a formal complaint or anything. And to this day, I've seen him several times since then, and it's never been mentioned again.
So I want to shift gears just a second. I want to talk about the police department with their policy. As chief of police, you're pretty familiar with the policy, I presume.
Yes,
Did it surprise you to hear that the city manager wasn't familiar with the policy?
did it surprise me? Not really, but it should have.
Do you think that the city manager should be familiar with the police department policy?
Well, the previous two were.
So tab 7 is your policy. So I want to look at part of it with you as well. Some of this is some of what we looked at a little earlier. So there's page numbers at the bottom.
There's not page numbers on the bottom.
Did they cut off the copy?
Apparently, tell me the section, I can look it up by the section.
I want to look at section, which is about this one, I believe.
Section 4 is under human resources. And this one. 14, does yours say page 142?
Now it says. 130.
Let's just take a peek at this and see how we're different here. Oops. There.
These page numbers at the bottom? Yeah.
And being that there's a city one and a police one.
We're looking at these and putting them together.
Tim, what tab are you under?
This is tab 7.
Thank you.
Yes. So this section of the policy manual talks about this one, the police department, correct?
District, yes, professional standards, subject, employee disciplinary procedures.
Right, so at the bottom of that page, going to the next, it talks about types of discipline, talks about positive discipline,
Yes, sir.
and corrective discipline, and punitive discipline.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain what the difference between those three things are?
Well, I guess the best way would be to kind of read it or summarize them. Positive disciplinary is designed to stimulate morale of the employee because that's important because our greatest asset to protect in the city is our employees. That's more important than anything. That is our most valuable asset. So this is to stimulate the moral, how would you say, positive morality in the city, because when you have disgruntled or morality is low in an agency, when morale's low, production's low. This is designed to address that, and it says reward such incentive as time as payoff, time with pay off, letters of commendation, and things like that to generate positivity to keep morale up. That's what that section means. The next is corrective. Corrective discipline is progressive and includes training and counseling. The reason why we put training in there is what our most valuable asset is a good employee. So if we can correct their bad habits or problems through training them, getting them proper training, we can correct that and keep that employee instead of having to hire and train from the beginning someone else. So that's what this is addressing. And the counseling, talking to them if they're unhappy or if they're having problems, bring them in and say, okay, look, you're doing this, it's wrong. Why are you doing it wrong? Or this is stimulating complaints. Why are you doing it? And then address that by sending them to some training in that area to correct that issue. That's what this is designed to do. And it says that the discipline is appropriate to those cases involving minor infractions that can be corrected through counseling and training. Because we don't want to lose a good employee. We want to correct good employees with some possible bad habits or bad choices that they're making. Educate them, train them, fix the problem. That's what that stands for. The final one is punitive. When punitive discipline is administered, factual documentation of the infraction or unacceptable performance is required. Punitive discipline shall include the following: a verbal warning or written reprimand, a letter in your employment file, which will affect you at your end of the year evaluation. That is sections A and B. Do you want me to continue going on?
I think you explained all three.
Yes, sir.
And what is punitive?
Punitive would be pretty much, well, as we all know, when you punitive damages, it's money. Taking their job would be punitive.
The dismissal is punitive.
Absolutely, because when you lose your job, you lose your income, your insurance.
So on page 133, you should still,
Yes, sir.
section E talks about
Section-
punitive,
Dismissal, yes, sir.
punitive action and dismissal.
Yes, sir.
Now, that policy says that removal of an employee from service, I see the Sky Valley is for cause. Now, we've heard a lot of discussion today that city manager doesn't need any cause. This would seem to contradict that, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, is it, which is your understanding is correct?
Well, this is the policy, this was what we're supposed to go by, and this is what I referenced whenever this incident with Mr. Brown occurred, was we have a policy and a procedure we must follow, or we open our city up. I was protecting the city from a possible legal lawsuit in the future. Therefore, we need to go by our policy, or we open our litigation.
But there's a conflict in the policy.
Absolutely.
And with the conflict in the policy, that puts you as chief in a pretty bad spot, doesn't it?
Yes,
It says that any employee who's dismissed will be provided with the following: a statement saying why they're dismissed, the effective date of the dismissal, a statement of the status, the fringe benefits after dismissal, and a statement disclosing what would be included in the member's personnel file. Any of those things happen in Jason?
I directly do not know.
Okay. Number 4 under that, we read this excerpt a little earlier. Says, except in cases of theft or serious violations of policy or procedures that creates a health or safety risk, disciplinary actions must be progressive in severity. Now, you've seen the video, we're gonna look at it again in a minute.
Yes, sir.
Do you see anything there that in your mind creates a health or safety risk?
No, sir.
Do you even see anything there that creates a policy violation?
No, sir.
So is it your opinion, and was it your opinion that any disciplinary action was necessary?
Not at that time, whenever I first saw this, well, what was told to me that I would see in the video and what I actually saw in the video were not the same thing. And I pointed that out. So,
How did you first find out about the video?
well, I remember that vividly because I had left town for my mother's birthday. Her birthday's May 4th. I left Ron in charge because Lieutenant Edwards was still at military duty and we were pulling multiple shifts. I was at my mother's and I got a call from the city manager and, and I answered the phone and it started off something like, I'll paraphrase it. I got him. I'm like, you got who? Doing what? I got Brown doing donuts in the parking lot of City Hall. I said, no way. We all know there's cameras everywhere up there. No, because I got the video. I said, okay. He goes, well, he's out of here. He's fired. I said, well, hold on. There's a policy we have to follow. I said, if you're gonna do that, you need to do it correctly or you will open us up for a lawsuit. And I said, what I need you to do right now is get me those videos and make your complaint in writing so that I can address that per policy by opening up an internal affairs investigation, which we do on these types of complaints. Give me your written complaint, specify your allegations, provide me the documentation and evidence, which in this case would be your videos, provide that to me, and then as soon as I get back I was in Noonan at my mother, as soon as I get back into town, I'll address it. He goes, there's no need to address it. He's fired, he's out of here. I don't want him working another day for the city of Sky Valley. I said, well, let me get in touch with Ron, who's in charge while I'm gone. We can get him sent home, park the vehicle that he's driving, send him home and put him on suspension for up to 3 days while we look into these allegations. Right now, there are allegations made against him. And he wasn't happy with me, but he did send me the video. I got the video of the truck going up on the curb and around, and I'm like, going up on the curb, okay, and I believe I even sent him a text message. I said, okay, there's gotta be more than this. Gotta be more than this. And he's, I don't need more than this. Okay, So I contacted Ron. Ron drafted that letter that we talked about in here earlier. Ron drafted that letter because I asked him to. I said, look, we gotta send him home, put him on suspension, park the car. I'll get on this when I get back. And that's how that started.
Okay, so you told the city manager you were gonna do an internal investigation?
Yes.
Okay.
That's our policy, of course.
And again, I just want to step back and clarify. So when I first called you this, you said it very excitedly. I got him. Was that his word?
Oh, yes, he was excited about this.
So changing gears, pardon the connection, changing gears for a second. So with the termination documents, I want to talk back about this 2020 Ram pickup.
Okay.
Do you know anything about the mechanical failure that occurred with that truck?
The way it was brought to me was there's a steering issue with the truck. Jason had Jerry look at it with the code reader. They looked at the code reader and the code reader indicated, like he said, hard turning, hard accelerating, hard braking. And I said, okay, that's common use for a police vehicle. We're going up driveways, your driveways, and making 4 and 5 point turns, especially in that long truck, to get turned around. So hard turns are common. If we're driving by and we pass the speeder, we have to hit the brakes, spin around and catch them. So braking, accelerating, hard turning is normal in the practice of law enforcement. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I thought, but that didn't fix the truck. That identified a problem. We took it down to Smith's Collision in Mountain City. Luke Smith, I believe it was Lieutenant Bombs that he told, oh, well, you know, he asked, hey, could a big driver have tore this up? And he said, no, there's a recall on this truck for this same problem. Contact the dealer. And I didn't keep up with every step of this because, okay, get it to the dealer. The dealer said, hey, this truck's not covered anymore, or wasn't covered, but it's a police vehicle. So we will make an
Let me
exception.
clarify something. So this, you're recounting a conversation you don't know if that particular truck was under recall or not.
No, I believe, to my knowledge, it was not under the recall.
I see. And you mentioned the stress and strain that's put on police vehicles. In your experience as a police chief and as a police officer,
Yes,
if you take a vehicle that's not ready for police work, can these kind of failures occur?
quite often. We had multiple issues with the Subarus, as was discussed earlier. And it was not the same problem. They have a different suspension, a different front end, a different steering. If any of you have Subarus, you know that they're independent because they're all-wheel drive. And so the strain is quite common for these type of vehicles.
Was there any connection between Casey Brown alleged between him and the Subarus?
There was lots of speculation from everyone in town about the Subarus not holding up because they were always in the shop. Every one of them had the front ends redone, the steering. They have, I can't remember what they call them now, basically the front stabilizer arms is on the Subaru for the independent driving, all-wheel driving. Was constantly going down, and the dealer over in North Carolina told us, look, we're not going to fix these cars under warranty anymore. They're not designed for police work. These are economy commuter cars, not police cars.
So are you aware of any definitive proof that will say that Casey was at fault in damaging the vehicle, the pickup, the Ram, when it was damaged?
No, the only thing, when I found out the steering was out on it, was about the same day I had found out what the mechanic said about the recall. And then I said, well, heck, get it to the dealership.
All right. So this internal affairs investigation that you conducted, I have a copy of your report in that binder. It's on page 10. And I want you to walk me through what your findings were. And look at the video too. If you'd like to look at the video and explain what you see in the video,
Okay.
that would be welcome as well. So let's, I guess, can we play the first video again? And if you'll watch that, and
Would you like me to talk as it's going, while it's playing,
please
as real time?
explain what you see.
Absolutely. I can see myself.
Sorry, it's trying.
I'm sorry, I don't want to block their view.
So.
This is
can we
in front of
pause
City
this?
Hall, front of City Hall, that white vehicle there is the city vehicle, it's normally parked there. That's where our police package is. What he was just doing was in front of this window behind you, shining their lights through here. They can see that door has not been breached, and that that deadbolt is locked, and that these windows are intact. So when they drive slow right there, that's what they're checking. Then, as common practice by all of us, you go to the end of the parking lot, turn around and come back from the other direction. So that's what we were seeing here, was the pass by, checking these windows, that door and that door as they go by. Then they will turn at that end of the parking lot and come back by, because that door on the other end is actually on the end wall. And you go around that white car that's parked there, so you have to kind of swerve out and in to get your headlights to hit that door to make sure it's not been breached. Then you drive by those other large windows on that end,
You can make sure.
drive by the other end, and you check those windows out. And then just inside the door, and you can see it through the window, we can see the alarm panel at night. If there's trouble alerting, it will be flashing. Like, for example, if we do not see a breach, but the motion sensors or something's going on, we haven't received the call yet, it will be flashing. So that's what they do. They check, notice the door, the windows, the door, go to the other end, turn, swerve around that white car to get their lights on that door, make sure it's not breached, come by, check that door, those ones. The deadbolts, by the way, when they shine their light on it, if the deadbolt is engaged, it reflects and you can see that it's intact. Then they check the alarm panel and then they move on. Now, as I said earlier, Casey's a little bit OCD, so he will not continue and go down here and go out the entrance. He will just won't do it. He turns around to go out the exit.
So let me stop and ask you a question. So the turn at the end of the building, that's on purpose,
Yes,
and there's a purpose for doing it.
yes, so you can come back from the opposite direction.
Now, let's watch the second video just a second.
No, I've seen it.
Hang on, just a moment.
Pause it, please. So while he's making that turn, perfect. You mentioned that there's a car in there. Is that a tight turn to make, in your opinion?
Yes,
Is that turn difficult to make in a larger vehicle?
yes,
And is that Dodge Ram, is that one of the larger vehicles that's in the police department fleet?
it's our largest vehicle.
It's the largest, okay. And, all right, let's play a little further. So when he comes back around, what would the purpose of it?
Comes back around to get his headlights to shine on that door that's on the end of this building.
Okay.
To make sure that it hasn't been breached in any way. Checks that, now he's checked his building, so since he goes down and turns and comes back, you can see that side door. When you go by this way, you can see pretty much everything except the deadbolt on the other door and that end door. And to see that end door, you have to come from the other direction.
Now back to that vehicle, that vehicle is a good bit larger than that Explorer, is it not?
Oh, yes, our Explorers are smaller than our Durangos, so yes, definitely.
All right. All right, let's look at your report. So here, the report, you first addressed the policy violations that relates down to section 4 of the handbook. What did you conclude?
that the video shows a circle turn in a parking lot, not a donut. We've all cut donuts, I'm sure. A circle turn in the parking lot during the building check, using the vehicle's lights for illumination, which is common practice. No laws of the state were observed to be violated as per Rule 3, and there's no requirement for the use of a signal light in a parking lot at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no traffic control devices, no intersections, no reason to use a signal light in the parking lot. And it says that the use of the equipment and vehicles requires careless, negligent, destructive, or unsafe use of operation of the equipment or the vehicle. And I continued by saying, during the circle turn in the video, it appears due to the large size of the truck that it was too large to make the turn and struck the curb, which our trucks in town strike curbs all the time. There was no damage assessed to the vehicle or to the curb. This may be viewed as bad judgment and could be addressed by administrative measures.
So those sections we read through that the city manager read through, section J, K, Q, you noted none of those apply. Why?
But based on what I just said, none of those, I would have to look at the individuals. For example, J, I did not see employee endangerment anywhere in that. Okay, no unauthorized use of tools or equipment. He's authorized to use that vehicle. That's one vehicle he uses. That's his main vehicle, is his tool. So I didn't see no unauthorized use of the tool that he's required to drive to do his job. Gross negligence. Gross negligence is a very high legal threshold. I do not see anything gross and negligent about this. I did address that by saying, well, possibly if he was bad judgment because he thought he could make that turn because perhaps the Subaru and the Explorers do, but the truck didn't. So that's why I said that gross negligence, bad judgment, sure. Gross negligence, willfully trying to tear the truck up, I did not see that. And then D, deliberate damage or destruction of city property. Nothing was damaged or destroyed.
Yeah. You also drew a conclusion over oath of office. Why did you look at that, Charles?
Where are we at here?
Page, just the second page of the.
What page number
The
is it?
second page of your report, which is 10.
10. Okay, there's the first one, there's the second one. Violation of both law, we all right in front of it. All right, violation of both law. I said does not apply because no law of the state of Georgia was violated. Our oath requires us to enforce the laws of the state of Georgia. I saw no state law violated. No city ordinance violated. The same applies. I saw no city ordinance violated by shining the building and turning around, bumping a curb and driving off. So in other words, if I didn't see anything I would criminally charge him with, I would not call that a violation because he did not violate the law and our ordinance has adopted, the city has adopted the state laws.
Did you think he violated any policies?
Any policies in that?
Yeah.
No, he was doing his job as we asked him to do.
There is some recommendations here, right? It
Yes,
says
sir.
At the end of the page, it could be viewed as poor driving habits.
Yeah.
Why did you recommend those things if you didn't think about
Well,
any policy?
As discussed earlier in our progressive discipline, these are the remedies that I have at my disposal. I can oral, write him up. That was the corrective one. Oral and written reprimand. Or I could, they had take-home vehicles. I could punish him and take his vehicle away from him and make him start driving his own car up here every day and leaving the truck park as a type of a corporal punishment there. And require him to take, going back to what we talked about earlier, training on driver safety. Because he made a bad judgment call, he made a turn where he didn't have clearance, and he thought he could, but he couldn't. Send him to a driver's school, make him take a driving class. And then, if that's not enough, I can suspend you up for 3 days. Outside of that, it's gonna require more aggressive disciplinary action, which I did not see was warranted, because these are what is in the lowest level that I felt was really available to me at that time.
So,
And I offered them all up, as you see right here.
so once you completed this report, did you share it with the city manager?
I brought it up here to his office. I made him a copy. I put it in a blue folder. I brought it to him and I was gonna give it to him. He told me there was no need. His mind was made up. I said, no, you're gonna get the city sued. I said, we have policy and procedure we have to follow. He said, I spoke with the city attorney and Doug Kidd told me.
Let's not talk about what the attorney said.
Okay, no, I'm gonna talk about what he said, no, what he said, and he knows what he said.
But you tried to give me
I did, and he refused it,
the.
said he didn't need it.
When's the next time you talk to him about that?
The next time, I believe we actually had he avoided me like the plague. I believe that the next time we actually had a conversation was when, I believe it was your office had submitted the open records request. And Miss Karen contacted me, do you have anything in Casey's file? I said, absolutely, I've got the internal affairs investigation. She goes, shouldn't that be in his file? I said, he would not accept it from me. She goes, well, I'm gonna need it. And so I made her a copy and I brought it to her so she could provide it to you through your open records request. And he got angry at me because I believe that was the first time he looked at it.
How do you know he got angry at you?
Because he told me that he felt like I didn't have his back in the Brown situation and he didn't think he could trust me anymore,
Is that exactly what you said?
basically.
City manager ever tell you that he just didn't like Officer Brown? He ever
Yes.
expressed that?
Yes.
What do you say?
I don't like his attitude. I don't like the way he walks around here with his loud voice talking and carrying on.
So we talked a little bit, and I'm not gonna belabor this much further, but we talked about the police department's disciplinary policy. Was it followed?
No, clearly.
When Officer Brown was terminated, did it leave your department short of personnel?
That was 50% of my night shift.
Is that position still open, do you know?
We filled it, in late July.
Okay. So it was terminated in May, so you had the position open a couple of months, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Is it your opinion that his termination affected the safety of the citizens of the city?
At a minimal level, yes, because I took it upon myself to put myself on call, and Lieutenant Bombs did as well. We would work day shift, 12 hours, and then on the nights Casey should have been working, we would put ourselves on call, and we would rotate coming out in the middle of the night, so that we had 24-hour coverage.
That delay response times at all?
Yes. Less for me, more for Ron. I live in the city.
Is there anything else about this I haven't asked you that you'd like counsel tonight?
Whenever I was arguing the point that we needed to follow our policy and our procedures, he got aggravated with me and told me that after speaking with the attorney, we were all at-will employees and could be fired at any time. And he pointed straight at me and said, I can fire anybody. And I took that as a direct threat, so I got up and I left.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Estes,
Yes, sir.
do you normally recommend punitive measures against officers who don't violate any policies at all?
Punitive measures, as in recommend them for termination.
Or any type of punitive measure, suspension?
I've only terminated one employee since I've been here.
So you're saying you would never investigate an officer, find out that they didn't violate any policies whatsoever, and then still recommend them be punished?
Say that again.
If you do an investigation and you determine this guy didn't violate any policies,
Okay.
would you ever still recommend that he be punished?
No,
Then why'd you do it in this case?
because I had already been told he's fired and I did not want him to be fired. So I tried to mitigate that by saying, we don't want to get sued. We don't want to fire a good employee. We have remedial measures right here that we can do. I recommend we do remedial measures instead of terminating him. And that was not even considered.
So you put something in an internal affairs report that you really didn't believe.
That's not true. I just explained that to you.
But you said that he used poor driving habits and careless driving, right? Maybe viewed as.
Maybe viewed as,
Poor driving habits or careless driving.
maybe viewed
Did you believe that at the time, or did you just put that into the?
as it may be viewed that because clearly the city manager viewed it as that. I clearly did not view it as that. So I'm trying to mitigate a termination and supplement it with some remedial things here.
In your view, what is an internal affairs investigation for?
Well, it depends on your policies and procedures that you follow. Most internal affairs investigations are done when an officer has been accused of doing something inappropriate in violation with their duty as an officer.
You would agree that an internal affairs investigation needs to be independent, correct? You don't need to rely on what the city manager or the city staff says or did or did not occur, correct?
Correct.
All right, so you, as the chief here, needed to do an independent investigation and give your independent thought of what you thought occurred and what type of punishment, if applicable.
That's not exactly right. This is not what I thought occurred. This is what the evidence led me to believe occurred. And internal affairs is separate from a criminal, because you know Garrity and all of that. So yes, it has to be maintained completely separate.
So I'm at a loss as to why you would say that he had poor driving habits or maybe viewed as having poor driving habits or careless driving. You didn't think that yourself.
Because as it says in here, and I know you understand this, I understand what you're trying to get here across, but it says may be viewed, and I can say may be viewed with authority because he clearly viewed it that way. I clearly did not.
You would admit, though, that the way you've written it there, it seems to indicate that in your mind, it may be viewed.
No, it clearly was viewed because I got the complaint from someone alleging it. There's no room for error. He alleged it, so I know it.
But ultimately, it says the following is recommended for corrective action. You could have said no corrective action needed, correct?
Well, at this point, keep in mind, I was told he's fired.
This internal affairs report, you didn't send that to the city clerk to be put in Officer Brown's personnel file here in City Hall.
I did when we received our open records request.
Right.
I tried to tender it, but I was told to leave.
There's a handwritten date on here of 5/8/23. Who wrote that?
That's my writing.
Okay, but you would admit that on 5/8/23, when you did this report, actually it looks like on the front page, it says 5/4/22. So
That was when it began.
so what happened?
That's when it finished. I do not sign my reports until they're completed.
So it started May 4th, ended May 8th.
Yes,
And then you would admit that you did not send this to City Hall until.
I brought it, hand delivered it.
To who?
I tried to hand it to him. He would not accept it.
When you say, something about the city manager?
City manager.
Okay. Did you give it to the city clerk or anyone else? No.
No, I just had my job threatened. I left the building.
So you tried to hand deliver it to Mr. Street and he did not accept it, so you took it where?
I took it back to our office. I put it in our file where we keep these type of files. That way, when we know we're gonna need them in the future, we have them ready to go.
Now, you understand that officers also have an employee record here in City Hall as well, right?
Yes,
Okay, and you understand that this internal affairs report probably needed to be in his.
absolutely. And it's not my responsibility to have him do his job and put it in that file.
So it's your argument or your belief that once you wrote that internal affairs memo, it was okay to stay in your file in your office.
What do you want me to do, throw it away? He wouldn't accept it.
All right, so let's talk about the driving procedures that we see on the video that you described here.
Okay,
It sounds like what you were describing was just almost a taught way to check the doors here, is that correct?
it's common practice amongst the officers here that was going on since before I got here.
Would it surprise you that video since May the 4th has not shown any type of driving like this from any of the other officers?
Would it surprise me?
Yes.
No, not at all. We all drive differently.
Right, okay, so if it was taught that way or the normal practice here since you said whenever, Why is Officer Brown the only one driving that way on camera?
I didn't train him how to drive, I can't answer that.
So this method that someone was taught, who taught it?
I have no idea, he was taught before I became his boss.
Alright. In fact, would you be surprised to know that most of the time on the recording, officers actually stop their car, put it in park, get out and hand check the doors to see if they're actually locked?
I've been known to do that myself. I've also been known to drive by and check.
Now, your internal affairs findings here, you say that you don't believe he violated any laws of the state or city ordinance. Is that correct?
And the evidence I was given, no.
Would that be because it was not on the roadway, instead it was in a parking lot?
In part,
Okay. Is it ever possible to violate the traffic laws of the state of Georgia in a private parking lot?
in limited situation there are, that's why if you've ever had an accident in a grocery store parking lot, they do a private property traffic report, not a uniform code of Georgia motor vehicle report. It's different because private property, public property.
So I'm trying to hammer down here. Is that why you said that no state laws were violated? Is because it was in a parking lot rather than out on the street?
No, because I saw nothing that would violate the law. If I couldn't write him a ticket for what he did, then it's not a violation.
You don't think that you could have written him a too fast for conditions ticket?
Based on what? What's his speed? What's the speed limit of that parking lot? We don't know. You can hear the engine, but the white car has dual exhaust, very loud. That has a Hemi engine in it, very loud. So based on what? No, there's no radar out there.
I mean, you would, well, most of the times when someone writes a too fast for conditions ticket, it's not because they got on radar. It's in fact, they didn't get it on radar and therefore they wrote the too fast.
And most of the time they have a crash.
And the officer that on a too fast condition is using their judgment, not
Yes.
radar, correct?
I didn't see an officer witnessing this.
That's correct. When you did the internal affairs investigation, you were using your knowledge as an officer to say,
Absolutely.
were there any laws violated?
Based on the evidence provided, I see no violation of the law.
So you don't.
Now, it may make you angry, but I see no law violated.
So you think if any officer with their training similar to yours would look at that and say, you know what, they're driving too fast for that parking lot right there. They did too fast when they did that turn. Did they be absolutely wrong?
Absolutely, everyone has a right to their own opinion. And based on that, everyone in this room may have a different opinion.
So. Now let's talk about these vehicles that we've been a part of the city for years now.
Yes, sir.
Those Subarus were the bane of y'all's existence, correct?
They were here when I got here, so yeah,
And so they were not made for police use.
correct. The Subaru dealer told me they were economy commuter vehicles.
And they were breaking down all the time,
Yes, sir.
for various reasons.
Yes, sir.
Reasons that don't even have to deal with improper driving, just simply being here in the mountain, correct?
The wear and tear, yeah, they weren't designed for 12-hour shifts on these hills. They were not designed.
And so you knew that these cars needed to be babied, so to speak.
We knew those cars needed to be replaced, and we have been trying for years.
And they eventually were, but y'all understood that these vehicles that were not made for police purposes had to be driven very carefully, correct?
Well, we had to drive them in order to do our job, so would you say carefully? Yes, we were all careful. But, you know, you couldn't do our job and drive them like they're a go-kart or a golf cart.
Was there anything in these two videos that would indicate that this officer needed to go that speed, whatever speed it was, whip it around like he did, and then in the second video, whip it around again a second time? Based on your experience, what did he see there to make him do that?
In my opinion, he was checking his building and moving on because he's got 34 miles of road in this town to check.
Okay, so he was driving in the second video a vehicle that was not manufactured specific for police use, correct?
The pickup truck.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And so, do you think he was driving it properly, knowing that, hey, this thing just got out of the shop, it's already had problems? Do you think he was driving?
I think he was driving it in accordance with doing his job, and if the vehicle wasn't up to doing the job, we wouldn't put him in.
Still better redirect. So you were asked asked in the beginning of the conversation about, poor driving habits and some of the things you recommended. And you have poor driving habits that don't rise to a policy violation?
I think everyone has poor driving habits. I've been working 36 years in law enforcement. So ask that question one more time?
Can you have poor driving habits without having a policy violation?
Absolutely. You can have poor driver's habits and not violate the law.
And if you saw an employee with poor driving habits, whether they violated the policy or not, would you recommend that they get training?
Absolutely.
Would you recommend any kind of remediation?
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit about too fast for conditions. How long have you been an officer?
36 years.
So is it your experience that the too fast for conditions, that's usually tied to some sort of weather condition?
Most of the time when you see a too fast for condition charge, it's because someone, most of the time, failed to negotiate their vehicle in a way to avoid an accident. And okay, the speed limit's 55, but it was pouring down rain and it had sleet in it and you're doing 50. So you're below the speed limit and you strike another vehicle. You were too fast for conditions. So too fast for conditions requires a little bit of responsibility on the driver to know that based on these conditions, I'm too fast for this curve, or the road conditions have changed, or my ability is not good enough for me to be doing 120 down 441. There's some driver responsibility there, absolutely.
So looking at that video, is there any indication in the video that there's any kind of special conditions that would affect that?
No, it was a clear, dry parking lot. The only thing that you could say may be a factor would be it's nighttime, but it's a clear night in a lit parking lot. All the lights on the vehicle worked.
Could the time be a factor?
3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
That's only, for me and you, yes, for him, no, because that's about the middle of his shift.
Is it likely that anybody else is gonna be out there ordinarily at that time of the morning in your experience?
No, it's pretty much nothing out there at 3 a.m. Maybe a bear.
Yeah. Well, okay. We talked a little bit about speed. Can you tell from that video how fast that vehicle was going?
No,
Have you ever had any video training that you're aware of?
video training?
Yeah.
Yes, I was a cybercrime specialist with Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and I did multiple video enhancements throughout my career.
So can something appear faster in a video than it actually is?
Absolutely.
Does frame rate in a video matter?
All of that can matter as well. I mean, this was like a major crime, and we believe that this was a homicide suspect fleeing. There's ways to determine the exact speed of the vehicle. You measure the width of those parking lots, between them lines, measure the length of the truck, and see how long it takes it to go from point A to point B. But you're looking at massive forensic hours to develop that type of evidence.
And even that may not be accurate based on frame rates.
Absolutely.
Do
The angle of
you
the
know what the
camera.
frame rate is for this video?
I do not. I know that the cameras are above us all in the eave of the building shining down, so it's a skewed angle to start with.
Nothing else on the video. I'd like to call this my last one. Now proceed. Everybody looks like they may be ready for a break. It's all right.
Y'all want a break?
That's fine.
We'll take a 5-minute
Let's
break.
take
that's
five
fine.
minutes.
All right. I'm gonna call Mr. Brown. Yeah, okay. Been a long afternoon. We'll try and keep this short. So, just remind for the record,
Yes, sir, Casey Brown.
okay? And you were employed here by the city of Sky Valley, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And before you came here, were you employed in law enforcement?
Yes, sir, I was.
Where did you work before you came to Sky Valley?
So when I started out at Raven County Detention Center, then I actually started my full-time policing career out in Gainesville, PD.
Okay.
Gainesville, Georgia.
So while you worked here for Sky Valley, so when did you start for Sky Valley?
I believe it was October 2014,
Okay. And
part-time.
That's part-time?
Yep.
And you became full-time when?
July of 2019.
Okay. And you were full-time up until May 8th when you were terminated?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So what was your assignment here at Sky Valley? What did you do for the first part?
I was a night shift patrolman.
And you were one of two, did I understand that correctly?
Yes, sir, yep.
All right. So tell us a little bit what your duties are on night shift patrol. What do you do?
Well, I done a lot of traffic enforcement, on Highway 246 as well as in the city. I done lots of property checks. We actually have a property checklist here at the city. There are specific addresses on that checklist that had to be checked every single day, twice a day. So, I mean, that just serve the citizens and protect the citizens.
So today, we're here to appeal your termination. Can you tell me how you first found out that there was trouble, that this issue was gonna come up, that you might be terminated?
I really never know that I was gonna be terminated, practically until it happened. And when Lieutenant Bowman came to my house and placed me on administrative leave, that's when I know that there was a problem.
Okay. He didn't give you any written notification that said any specific charges you were alleged to violating or anything like that?
No, he did say that it was due to me allegedly recklessly driving through the parking lot at City Hall. Which is,
But he didn't specify any particular policy violations?
no, sir, he did not.
So you mentioned a moment ago, your termination letter is dated May 8th, and that's also when it says it's effective. Was that the first time that you knew you were being terminated?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. When you met with the city manager, did he tell you he was going to terminate you?
No, not originally. He, first gave me the option to resign.
Okay.
And I asked for what reason, and that's when he told me because he didn't like my attitude and the way that I drove through the parking lot.
Okay.
And I said, if I do not want to resign and decline the resignation, what would be the alternative? And he said termination.
Okay. Was it your opinion that he had already made up his mind to terminate you?
Absolutely.
So we've seen a lot of video about driving. I don't think we need to see it again. I think everybody's seen it a couple of times. But can you describe to me what you're doing in those videos?
Yep. Just like Chief SD said, this right here, if you're looking at the parking lot from right here, this is the east side of the parking lot. That is the west side of the parking lot. Good. I entered the east side of the parking lot like you seen on the video, and just like they said, I was checking the windows to make sure they wasn't busted out, nobody broke in. You can see this door here, secure, and checking that deadbolt right yonder. Then when I drive down the parking lot, when I conduct that turn, I'm checking the east side deadbolt on that door. And checking them windows over there and that other rear door on the other side of the building. And I had my headlights on bright, the tape downs on, the light bar was on. And there's little bitty deck lights on the front of the vehicle as well. So, but yeah, that's what I was doing. It was just a business check. And that's what that technically is a business check.
So the second video is with this Ram pickup truck. Do you find it harder to turn it than you would say the Explorer smaller vehicle?
Absolutely.
And can you tell me why you wound up hitting the curb that night?
I honestly didn't know that I was gonna strike the curb. Yes, did I strike the curb? Yes, I did. And you can see that in the video. I've never disputed that. But when you see me driving the Ford Explorer, which is actually the real police vehicle, the Dodge is a civilian vehicle. That's not what that vehicle was manufactured for. We've established that. Of course, it's longer. It does not have a good turning radius, and it would not turn around as easy as the Explorer would. So yes, I mean, I did strike the curb, but I honestly didn't know that I was gonna do that.
Yeah, so that wasn't intentional on your Department, was it?
Absolutely not.
You ever intentionally damaged any vehicle at Sky Valley Police Department?
Absolutely not.
So there's a lot of discussion about other damage to that Dodge Ram truck before this incident. Are you aware of that?
No. Tell me the question.
There's been a lot of testimony today about damage to that Dodge Ram truck that occurred before these two video incidents. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
What do you know about that?
In reference to like the toolbox, like Lieutenant Bones was saying, yes, when I was driving that Dodge Ram, the toolbox actually did come unsecured from the bed rails, and it was in there sitting long ways. You know, the toolbox you mounted right up against the cab, and it's supposed to be sitting there secure. When that toolbox was originally installed on that vehicle, it didn't have bolts and nuts running down through the bed. It was only placed on there with like that sticky stuff. You know, it's sticky on one side and it's like Velcro, kind of like. That's why the toolbox actually came off of the vehicle, and it did. Now, let me put this out here. I did go to my superiors and tell them that I've done that, and I had the maintenance department actually reinstall that toolbox on that truck correctly and properly with bolts and nuts.
So it wasn't properly secured to that.
It was not.
So what do you know about the damage that had occurred with that truck, the steering problem that had occurred?
I believe it was about 3 weeks prior to this incident that we're here today on that occurred in the parking lot. That Dodge Ram, it started making some kind of noise. Like at 3 o'clock one morning, on my shift, when you turned it all the way to the left or all the way to the right, it would make some kind of noise. I don't know how to explain it, but I know something was wrong with it. The steering was getting tied on it, so I immediately brought that thing back down here to the police department. And I told Lieutenant Bonas about it the next morning, I believe. And I mean, it just went from there. But yeah, I mean, while I was working, the steering problem did happen while I was working.
So in driving that larger vehicle, are there times when you're driving that you have to steer it extremely in each way?
Absolutely.
And why is that?
Well, you know, it's like the chief was saying, lots of these, and I'll refer back to the property checklist. A lot of these addresses that are on the property checklist in the city have very tight driveways. Okay, there's not a lot of room to turn around, especially that Dodge Ram. That thing should have never been bought to begin with, in my opinion. But going up in all these addresses in the city, you literally have to pull up, back up 3, 4, 5, and 6 times. So, I mean, you've got to cut that thing deep to get out of them driveways. And same thing is here, you know, if I'm conducting traffic enforcement on the highway or in the city, wherever it may be, if you catch a violator vehicle, you've got to abruptly stop. You know, you got to turn that steering wheel, you know, sharp, get turned around on these rigs to go catch them.
Did you ever do anything on purpose to damage that vehicle?
Absolutely not.
Any other vehicle?
Absolutely not.
So you said you didn't get any advance notice of your termination. That meeting with the city manager, that's the first time that you knew you were being terminated, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. The comment to Lieutenant Baum, we've talked about some, it's in his memo. Let me read you what he wrote about it. It says, our last rotation, while you and I were discussing the complaints made about our vehicles breaking down on our drivable road, you stated, quote, "I want to drive these vehicles the same as I did in Gainesville. It's not my fault we don't have real police cars." What was the context of that conversation? What were y'all talking about?
I don't recall exactly what we was talking about. Did I say that statement? Yes, I did. And when I said that, that's what I meant. My job here at this city was the police. That's what my job duties are, is to police. As far as city ordinances, county ordinances, if I was requested by a deputy to answer a call, state laws and federal laws. Yeah, that's my job as a police. Part of, the job of being a police is to drive a police vehicle. I was issued a vehicle that was not police rated, okay? And we're speaking of the Dodge Ram, and we can even go back to the Subaru times, okay? You know, do I intentionally try to tear these vehicles up? Absolutely not. But I drive them for the intended purpose that they was issued me for, which was to enforce laws.
Were you frustrated that you were asked to do police duties in a vehicle that wasn't up to what you needed to do? Was that what I sensed of what you said?
No, I'm not. I wasn't frustrated in it, but you know, if you're gonna provide me with a vehicle that is not a real vehicle, I'm still gonna drive that as a real police vehicle, because that's how you issue that vehicle to me. You know, and we've already established throughout the course of the day, a civilian vehicle that's not specifically manufactured for police work is not going to stand up to the driving skills and abilities of how you drive. But anybody's got any common sense gonna know that.
Yeah, that's really about all I have, but is there anything else you'd like to tell the council?
I would like to tell everyone youngs today that the whole time I've worked here, I have always been extremely professional. I've treated everybody with dignity, respect, and professionalism. And I feel as though that me being terminated was unreasonable. I mean, it's like you take one single thing that occurs out here in the parking lot and you just fire at somebody for it. I find that to be ridiculous. All the previous stuff of all the years, and that's been almost 10 years that I've worked here, I've done lots of good stuff for this city. And I've helped lots of citizens here. And I do my job as the police. That was my job, that's what I've done. I took lots of people to jail from here. That's my job. You know, if you break the law and you need to go to jail for DUI or whatever the case is, that's where you're going. That was my job, you know? And I feel as though that I've always done a good job here, and I'll leave it at that.
Officer Brown. These vehicles that y'all had to drive, the Dodge, the Subarus in the past, it's already been established, they're not police vehicles. And you knew that for years, correct?
I did.
Right, and you knew that they could not be driven like you could a police rated vehicle, correct?
Yeah, they're not gonna hold up to police work.
Right.
That's right.
So if you try to drive them like a police rated vehicle, they're not gonna hold up, as you stated, all right? And you were aware that back in mid-April, so the Dodge Ram was acting up on you while you were on shift. You testified as to the steering, correct?
That's correct.
And you reported it to your supervisors, correct?
I
And
did.
they reported it up the chain until it got to the city manager, and the city manager had to go get it fixed, correct?
Right.
All right, so you were aware of that. All right, and you were aware that it was a steering problem mainly with the Dodge Ram, correct?
That's right.
All right, and so it got back into service, I think, May 3rd or May 4th, correct? All right, and I think the first night it was back into service, it was your shift, correct?
It was.
All right, so you were back in the same vehicle that the last time you were in it, it acted up because of steering, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and so we're here, we've seen the videos May 4th, for the second night in a row, you came to City Hall and you did the maneuvers that we saw in the video, correct? Why did you drive it that way if you knew it had steering problems and it was its first night back on the duty?
because that's the intended purpose of that vehicle, is to be drove for police work.
There's, your attorney brought it up and Chief Estes had brought it up too, and it's kind of, you can't tell certainly how fast was somebody was going or anything, but we have eyes, we see it. It looks like you were going too fast, you gunned it, you whipped it around, and then on the second night, you whipped it around again to go back out the same entrance.
Now, I will tell you this, that on the first video when I was driving the Explorer, you can see that it does not seem as though that I'm going as fast with it as what I was the Dodge.
Right.
Now, I probably was going a little faster in the Dodge than what I was the Ford, which is the second. But if I recall, I believe the reason I've done that is lots of times, and I'll do this, for the public, that way they know what I'm doing. I used to say it in this parking lot out here. I'd watch vehicles drive by to observe violations. Okay, I use this as my second spot. I believe I had been sitting here earlier in the day on that particular day and had already noticed that this side over here, this deadbolt was already engaged. So when I come back by that morning at 3:30 or 4:30, where it was, I'd already known and could see that it was engaged. That's why I didn't slow down. Then I went on by. In the first video with the Ford, I didn't know. That's why I had to slow, go up, make sure it was open, and then go on. But yes, I was going a little faster with the Dodge than the Ford.
And you would admit you were going so fast that you couldn't negotiate that turn, you actually hit the curb.
I do not agree with that.
Okay, how do you characterize it?
I characterize it as the vehicle is a whole lot bigger than a Ford Explorer. Even if I had been going the same exact speed in both vehicles, I would have been able to negotiate that turn with the Ford and not with the Dodge because it's such a larger vehicle.
Right, but you had driven both vehicles, you knew what each was capable of, correct?
That's right.
And so you knew the Ram probably didn't have as good turning radius as the Ford, correct?
That's right.
And so if you were gonna make that turn in the Ram, you probably should have done it at a slower speed than what you would have done with the Ford, correct?
Not necessarily.
Why is that?
Because speed doesn't affect, that slow a speed is not going to affect being able to negotiate or not negotiate that turn going up on that curve out there. The main factor on that is the length of the vehicles.
So do you think the Ram just can't make that turn regardless of the speed?
No, I mean, it can, because I actually have done, conducted that same turn numerous times, previously. But yeah, I mean, everybody's saying that I struck that curve out there. I'm not denying that. But you have to give that thing it being so long, such a long vehicle, you literally have to drive along the edge of that drag stripe tire in front of the building to be able to make it turn.
How close to the building are you when you make that turn?
I don't know. Obviously not close enough.
No further questions.
Real quick question on where just one. So the Dodge pickup that we keep talking about, we've already established it's a lot bigger. It's been in the shop for some time, hadn't it?
No, yeah.
And you've been driving the Ford Explorer for some time while it was in the shop, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so do you think it's possible that because you've been driving a smaller vehicle, you just misjudged the distance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you intend to hit the curb?
Absolutely. No, I honestly didn't know that I was gonna hit that curve.
That's all. Thanks.
Definitely. No more witnesses.
No more witnesses.
No rebuttal on behalf of the city. I guess we were at closing arguments. I'm gonna waive opening to close.
Okay. Yeah. You can be seated. I understand, that's all right. I'm full comfortable trying to address what you understand. So I already said when I started, I really do appreciate your time. Thanks for taking time to listen to me, and listen to my client. I appreciate the job that you do. I don't know about here, but I know a lot of places, city council is a volunteer thing, and it's your own time, and I appreciate what you do. But you've heard a lot tonight. You've heard a lot about different things, and vehicles, and speeds, and driving, and procedure, and it's a lot to take in. So I appreciate your attention, but you now have a decision. There's a decision that you have to look at. And before I talk about that, I want to, and humor me just a moment, this is a little personal, but as a kid, I used to come up here a lot. So my mom, she painted. She would enter art in one of the resort here. I think they had an art show. It was like 70s, right? And it always struck me how beautiful and peaceful this place is. And it still does. I thought about that on my way up here when I looked at all the leaves and driving here. And it occurs to me that the peaceful serenity of this community is really one of the primary draws for people to live, work, and relax here. And a lot of that sense of peacefulness comes from the knowledge that Sky Valley has a full service, 24-hour police department that has people like Officer Casey Brown working here. And Casey started in 2014 as part-time, and full-time in 2019. And the whole time he's been here, like we noted, he worked the overnight shift. It's a hard position to fill sometimes. Stayed awake to keep those in this geographically isolated community safe, slow. And it's a job a lot of people want to do, but Casey did, and he did a good job at it. This community was safer because of it. And now, because of an opinion of the city manager, he's no longer here. And I would tell you that that makes your community less safe. You've heard a lot of evidence. You've heard from the city manager, you've heard from Lieutenant Bond, you've heard from the former chief, you've heard from Casey yourself. And at the end of the day, his termination really boils down to that, to the fact that the city manager didn't like the way that Casey was driving his cars, didn't like his attitude, whatever that's supposed to mean. But you heard evidence of how an internal affairs investigation done by the chief at the time concluded that Casey didn't do anything wrong. And how almost every policy regarding the disciplinary procedure that's set out in the police department policy was violated in the process of firing Casey. You heard how that damage initially done to the Dodge pickup truck can't be proven to be Casey's fault. And that in the instance caught on video, Casey was doing his job with no vehicle damage done at all, save for a ding to a rim. Yet, the city manager decided to fire Casey over these petty things. That ultimately cost the city a lot more. In essence, this is really a case about leadership and not driving. You see, you look at me today, I know, and you see in Atlanta, I hadn't always been in this line of work. I spent a career in law enforcement, nearly 30 years, and I retired as a major. I've led and managed a lot of people. And one of the things that I've learned and that I would like to express to you is the fact that the greatest asset that any organization has is its people. It's not its equipment, it's not its buildings, and it's certainly not its vehicles. It's the employees of this city that form its heart. There's an awful lot of people interested in this case. Got a full house. And the way I see it, and the way I think a lot of them see it, is your decision today says a lot more than just about Casey. It says what kind of city Sky Valley is and is going to be. Is this a city that doesn't care about employees, that ignores its own policies, that will tolerate leadership by intimidation or bullying? Is this a city that condones a leader that rebels when an employee does something that they think improper and proclaims with glee, I got him, and then jumps straight to termination without even looking at an investigation into the facts or speaking with that employee? Is it a city that cares more about stuff than people and would rather squander the city's #1 resource by instantly jumping to termination instead of trying to save the investment the city's made in their employees through the use of progressive discipline for minor violations, which wasn't done? Alternatively, is this a city that does care about its employees, that will follow its policies, and that believes in the value of its people and works to protect that investment, and by doing so, ultimately protects the people in this community? I want to close today with one of the letters that's in your folder. It's actually Exhibit 15. It's the letter we talked about earlier from Ms. Clapper. Her word speaks volumes. I'm gonna read it verbatim minus her address. Dear Chief, early this morning around 3 a.m. my phone rang, waking me up from a deep sleep. The caller identified herself from 911. She said our policeman had noticed our garage door was open and just wanted to be sure we were okay. I told her I'd forgotten to close it last night. I got up and sure enough, our Sky Valley policeman was out walking around our parking area with his flashlight. I opened the door, greeted him, explaining that we had someone doing yard work yesterday, and I'd been in and out of the garage. And once the yard work was done, I'd forgotten to close the door. I asked him his name, and he explained that he noticed the garage was open, which was very unusual for our house. I thanked him and said I would close it right away, which I did. I had a difficult time going back to sleep because I kept thinking of what types of awful things could happen if the garage door opened, allowing easy access to our house, and thinking how grateful I am that our police take time to notice things out of the ordinary only because they've previously observed what is ordinary. A huge thank you to Casey for being so diligent and taking time to check with me that everything was okay. I eventually went back to sleep, feeling secure in my own home, knowing that our police are out here in the dark while we sleep. Thank you, Casey. Helen Fine. This city was safer with Casey Brown on the watch. He was a good officer. He was a good servant to the city. His experience and diligence and attention to detail made him a valuable employee, regardless of what you think of his driving habits. And for all these reasons, I ask you today to reinstate Casey, pay him his back pay. It's ultimately your decision. What kind of city is this going to be? Thank you.
I think Mr. Davis is correct about one thing. The city's employees are a valuable resource. But to add to that, the city's employees also have to value the resources that the city has. And Officer Brown testified that he's been here for years, and he was aware of the city having to spend resources, dollar after dollar after dollar, on motor vehicle repairs for the police department. Now, it seems like Officer Brown seems to think that because the city didn't provide police-rated vehicles, then the repair costs are just the cost of doing business. He's going to drive them however he wants to. Officer Brown, who by almost all actions was a good officer. He did. He had good recommendations in his file. But either he wasn't thinking or just wasn't aware, just plain negligent. He drove his vehicle that he knew was already having problems, that the city had already spent money on to get fixed. He got it back the very next night and drove it in a manner that was going to break it again if he kept it up that way. The policies that the city had in place were implemented. The videos that we saw, there was never given any explanation for a reasonable way of why he was driving in that manner. Why did he have to go fast all the way down there, hit the brakes, take a left, whip it around, and then come up, according to him, mere feet from the building on the grass and whip it again to try to make that turn? There was no reason. Why did you have to do that? Now, Chief Estes gave an explanation, but I don't find that explanation reasonable or credible. The explanation was that he was checking the windows and the doors, and he had to drive in such a manner for the lights to be able to do that. But the thing is, since May 4th, our cameras here have never seen any of our officers use that technique. I don't think that's credible. I don't think that's a technique that was taught. I think that was an after the fact explanation for why he was driving in that manner. So I wouldn't give him any credibility to that. It may seem like a ticky-tack thing to fire somebody over driving, but this is a city with limited resources, and it's a city that has had to pay out for vehicle repairs over and over again. The police staff knew about it. Officer Brown knew about it. And yet he disregarded that knowledge and still drove in a manner that was going to break the cars again. Now, I'm not gonna bore everybody with the reasons of each policy that he broke. It's in the letter that the city manager gave to him. We feel strongly that he violated those policies, that our policies allowed for us to terminate him immediately and not go through progressive sanctions against him because he did put himself and this building at risk by making those driving procedures. And so I will ask the council to uphold the termination.
Okay, at this point in the hearing proceedings, I will need a motion to go into executive session and go off the record to discuss termination. Move, we had a first, second, thank you, discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're going off the record. Okay. I need a motion to return to, as we return to the hearing, to go back onto the record.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. We deliberated and I think we heard a lot today. Thank you all. I need a motion after our deliberation concerning Casey Brown's termination.
I move that we reinstate Casey Brown with all back pay.
Second. Second. All in favor with Tim's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify with nay. The motion carries. He is reinstated. I think we're adjourned.
Wait, and Mrs. Mayor,